Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Ehrlich and I'm a senior at Park Tutor School. Thank you all so much for tuning in to my Global Scholars presentation. I'm really excited to share my findings with you about the importance of interdisciplinary learning in both education and research. So, let's begin. School. What is it? It's a place of learning. The real question is, what should it be? What type of learning should be implemented at school? Now, you all might rush to discuss different classes such as English, history, and biology. However, that is all part of one system, one type of learning, in which information has been carefully siphoned and siloed into subject-specific areas, and where people are encouraged to choose one field and go deep into it. Throughout world history, society has oscillated between valuing this more specialized education and taking the broader route, where multiple fields of study are learned together so that they may synchronously build upon one another in order to create more intellectual human beings. Today, society is in a transition phase. Due to the hyper-specialization of the Industrial Revolution, our education is currently wired to train students to view knowledge as inherently specialized, teaching them that their role in society is to pick one field, dive into it, and stay there, continuously digging deeper within the same narrow hole for the rest of their lives. The ideology behind this is that if everyone is digging a bunch of narrow holes, then these holes combined will eventually form a huge crater. However, now, as technology has increasingly united us across the world, we are entering an era where the majority of our problems may only be solved through interdisciplinary thinking and through the simultaneous application of various concepts. This is already manifesting itself on the undergraduate level, and even more so in scientific research, namely through the rise of data science and its applications in public health. However, in order to fully embrace the interdisciplinary turn that society is taking, we must go one step further and begin to promote cross-disciplinary thinking that may one day be directed towards problem solving both in the workforce and beyond. So, we'll begin by going through the history of knowledge acquisition and analyze what it is that makes society constantly oscillate between favoring the polymath with an all-inclusive curriculum and preferring a system that supports the specialist, whose learning is neatly compartmentalized. So we'll go all the way to the start with the ancient Greeks. Due to a vast curiosity about the unknown, the political stability present at the time, and Pericles' decision to sponsor the arts, ancient Greece became a perfect incubator for the acquisition of information across various fields of study without distinction. It was this approach that yielded great progress in human knowledge. The ancient Greeks themselves epitomized the idea that one man can study all subjects. Such interdisciplinary curiosity ultimately gave rise to men such as Aristotle, who made important contributions to logic, math, physics, biology, botany, ethics, politics, agriculture, medicine, dance, and theater. However, despite having himself participated in almost every discipline there was, Aristotle was also the first to classify all living things. Little did he know at the time, but this method of approaching the world, this compartmentalization of objects, would soon also be applied to knowledge, and would ultimately lead society to adopt an approach to learning that was very different from the broad and interdisciplinary method that Aristotle championed. Yet, even though Aristotle sowed the seeds for the specialization of information, it took a moment of great political instability for these seeds to blossom and for intellect to be exclusively divided among people. This tipping point was the breakup of Rome. Following the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476, Western Europe was plunged into a period categorized by political fragmentation and feudalist rule, out of which the Church appeared as the new dominant power of Europe. It was this division between the Church and practically everyone else that set the precedence for the division of knowledge among people. This was most clearly illustrated with the simultaneous rise of both guilds and universities. As guilds developed, they began to divide and multiply, each guild covering an increasingly more niche and more specialized aspect of a trade. Soon enough, in a city where there was only one guild, there could be hundreds of different guilds, each one focused on a separate craft or skill. Now, many of these craft guilds came about because the growing population in cities and towns led to increases in specialization and in division of labor. Now, on the other side of the social ladder, the elite also faced an increase in intellectual specialization with the rise of universities. Throughout the 9th and 10th centuries, wealthy families began to invest in the creation of universities throughout Europe, such as the University of Salerno and University of Bologna depicted here. These universities were founded with the goal of giving the children of the elite a higher education comparable to that received by monks at cathedral schools. Now, although each university created an intellectual environment that was conducive to scholarly union and collaboration, the learning taking place here was incredibly specialized. For example, the University of Salerno was almost entirely focused on medicine, and the University of Bologna was principally focused on law. This same transition from the unification of knowledge and its later dissociation and specialization is a pattern that has repeated itself throughout world history. For example, similar to ancient Greece, the Renaissance was a rebirth of the classical world's approach to knowledge acquisition. We can clearly see the classical Greek influence in each of these famous Renaissance paintings. Now, during the Renaissance, there was minimal political conflict, largely because the majority of Europe had just been wiped away by the horrific Black Death, as depicted here. Moreover, similar to the public spending done by Pericles in ancient Greece, wealthy merchant families, such as the Medici family in Florence, were investing money into the development of the arts. This combination of political stability and widespread patronage of the arts gave birth to the flourishing era of intellectual thought and artistic creativity that was the Renaissance. This painting here, which depicts all the great minds of ancient Greece working together, is just one illustration of the Renaissance era's fascination with interdisciplinary collaboration and how it is similar to that which was present in ancient Greece. Out of the Renaissance came the return of the polymath. In fact, the Renaissance is the reason we have the term Renaissance man. As an example, let's look at one of the most famous Renaissance men of all time, Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci was not only the one behind the ever-so-famous Mona Lisa, but he was also an Italian mathematician, engineer, architect, anatomist, sculptor, botanist, and musician. No wonder his IQ is estimated to be around 220, making him perhaps the smartest person ever. However, just as had occurred with the rise of the Middle Ages, immense political instability in the late 1700s and early 1800s, coupled with the massive technological upheaval presented by the Industrial Revolution, ultimately resulted in the death of the Renaissance man, and the start of an era of increasing specialization of knowledge that has continued to be the norm until today. The great intellectual advances during the Renaissance ultimately kick-started the Enlightenment, which was a period of intellectual collaboration among scholars and during which radical new ideas on everything from science to politics were developed. During this time period, several philosophers rose to prominence, such as John Locke, who popularized the notion of the social contract and the protection of an individual's natural rights in his second treatise. In fact, it were these exact ideas that prompted the American colonists to declare independence from Britain. This is evidenced by the Declaration of Independence, which draws heavily from Locke's social contract and natural rights in justifying America's independence, and in setting the foundation for a new government for the new government that Americans would set up, one that protects life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is almost identical to the natural rights of life, liberty, and property that Locke wrote about in his works. American independence set the precedent for a host of revolutions across the globe, including the French Revolution, the Irish Rebellion of 1798, the Haitian Revolution, the revolts in Latin America, and the wave of revolutions across Europe in 1848. Thus, it seems that the Enlightenment, which was a byproduct of the intellectual collaboration during the Renaissance, ironically brought the world into an age of revolutions, a time full of political instability, and out of which came rigid compartmentalization of knowledge. Now, out of all this political instability came wars, namely the Napoleonic Wars, which completely destroyed Europe. Now, even though the end of the war marked a temporary political setback through the restoration of the monarchy in France, The Napoleonic Wars resulted in many positive economic consequences, which ultimately paved the way for the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution gave birth to the concept of mass production and the factory system. This new system integrated the technological innovations developed at the time with a new system of division of labor, one that was further specialized following the rise of Frederick Taylor's theory of scientific management at the turn of the 20th century. Instead of each worker being responsible for all steps in the production of a single good, Taylor discovered that the system would be even more efficient if managers selected the most appropriate people for each job and trained them to do that single job efficiently, and then they would monitor their performance in order to ensure conformity and time efficiency. And this we could see depicted here, where each laborer is focused on only doing one step of the production process and repeating that constantly, which would drastically improve the efficiency of the process. This concept of compartmentalization of labor also spilled over into the world of education. This was illustrated with the rise of the Prussian model of education, a system that has been adopted throughout the world and has not changed much from the time it was invented. In this model, students are grouped by age, and when they enter school, it's as if they have stepped onto one of Henry Ford's moving assembly lines. As the students would move at a set pace, which would be each year going through grade after grade, you would have information being delivered at every point, and the amount of time that you have to learn this information is fixed for each student. The only thing that's variable is how much information they get. So basically, this education system was one focused on time and efficiency, getting all the kids graduated within a specific time, such as 10 or 12 years, and it didn't really put as much emphasis on the learning process itself. Now, in addition to having put students in age bins and mass-producing/impersonalizing the learning process, the Prussian system also promoted the separation of knowledge into different subjects that would be taught in separate classes. For example, math teachers would focus on math, science teachers on science, and English teachers would focus on English. The entire school system geared students towards specialization, selecting one subject over another and delving deep into it. By the time kids graduated, they either entered the industrial workforce, where all their efforts were specialized on a single task, or they went on to university, where they would join one of the many classes that they were exposed to in secondary school, lock the door to that class, and never again expose themselves to field of knowledge outside of the scope of their selected subject. In fact, this ideology forms the basis of the approach towards education that we have today. So, having looked at the history of education, it seems that there are three factors that cause society's perspective of knowledge acquisition to shift. 1. Political stability. It seems that during times with more political stability, such as ancient Greece under Pericles and the Renaissance era, interdisciplinary learning has thrived. However, at times of political instability and unrest, such as in the Middle Ages and the Age of Revolutions, society has shown a tendency to shift towards more specialized learning. Our second factor is public and private investment. It was due to Pericles and the Medici family's patronage of the arts that artistic creativity and cross-disciplinary explorations were able to flourish. On the other hand, medieval investments from the elite contributed to the creation of specialized universities, and British consuls were one of the factors that kick-started the Industrial Revolution. Finally, our last factor is the development of new technology. Due to the interdisciplinary endeavors of Aristotle and Da Vinci, many new inventions were created. However, some of these new technologies, such as the idea of taxonomy and the general intellectual freedom promoted by the Renaissance, contributed to the eventual dismantling of interdisciplinary learning. Additionally, the rise of new technologies, such as the steam engine, promoted new systems of work that mass-produced and compartmentalized both labor and knowledge, as was seen with Taylorism and the Prussian model of education. So, given all of this, where does that put us now? Well, in order to answer this, let's look at how political stability, investments, and technology are present in the modern day. With regards to political stability, it seems that we have never before been in a more peaceful time. Following the end of World War II, the world has been in a period of relative peace. In fact, Europeans are now living in a 70-year period of peace. This is longer than any other period in history, in more than 2,000 years. Out of all this political stability came a boom in investment spending. We saw this in the late 1990s with the rise of the dot-com bubble. Following the creation of the internet, investors saw tons of potential in the tech sector and began pouring money into tech startups. To say the least, their money seemed to be well spent. These investments kickstarted some of the biggest names in the tech industry, including Apple, Google, Amazon, eBay, and Adobe. Out of all this investment have come massive advances in technology. This is currently epitomized with the rise of big data and artificial intelligence. New technologies have enabled increasingly better means of data collection, and with that, we now have more data than we know what to do with. This data may be conducive to research in all sorts of different fields, whether it be retail, finance, healthcare, travel, education, telecom, e-commerce, or entertainment. Given the wide array of disciplines for which big data may be revolutionary, in order to get the most out of this data, we must share information across all departments. And this is a process which depends upon a strong interdisciplinary foundation. Additionally, the rise of artificial intelligence is currently setting a trend that will ultimately alter the focus of the job force from specialization to cross-disciplinary collaboration. AI influence is most directly being seen in the manufacturing industry, a place famous for its overbearing division of labor. Artificial intelligence is giving rise to a new type of factory, a smart factory, one where major decisions are made quickly by computers and where productivity and efficiency skyrocket. In fact, it's predicted that by 2035, AI-powered technologies will increase labor productivity by up to 40% in 16 different industries. With rising productivity within factories, the job market will soon begin to shift from needing unskilled laborers who specialize in one single task to requiring innovators who can draw from a diverse intellectual background in order to help program smarter AI that can draw connections between various fields of study. Thus, given the rise of big data and artificial intelligence in the context of political stability and large investments, it appears that we are currently on the brink of a massive restructuring of society's approach towards knowledge acquisition. Through taking account of our present situation in light of historical patterns and trends, it seems that we are beginning the transition back to an all-inclusive outlook, and thus starting a new round of the age-old cycle between collaboration and compartmentalization. This is especially important today, as given the rising globalization and connection underway due to constantly improving communications technology like cell phones, email, text, and social media, it's becoming increasingly important to have a population that is aware and educated on a wide array of topics, so that we may all protect ourselves from succumbing to the lies and disinformation that currently proliferate the internet. So, if interdisciplinary collaboration and learning seem to be in our immediate future, what will this look like? What steps will we have to take? How will this look different from what we already have? Given the rise of interdisciplinary problems, such as climate change, obesity, and poverty, the academic world is slowly but surely beginning to once more make a shift, this time from depth to breadth. This is most clearly seen with the rise of liberal arts colleges. The idea actually began centuries ago in the United States with the models of some of the first universities, such as Harvard, which was founded in 1636, Yale, which was founded in 1701, and Dartmouth, which was founded in 1769. Although these universities were not considered liberal arts colleges, they set the path for the foundation of some of the world's first liberal arts colleges. For example, Williams College, which was founded in 1793. Over the past few decades, the notion of a liberal arts undergraduate experience has spread both throughout the US and the world. In fact, today, one can get a liberal arts education in over 58 different countries, on every continent except Antarctica. We can visualize the widespread influence of liberal arts in this map that I constructed based off of my research. Recently, universities such as Duke have made massive strides in opening the doors for students to explore whichever subjects appeal most to them and to discover the crossroads of these different disciplines in unique ways. For example, through Duke's Focus program, Students have the opportunity to immerse themselves in a variety of seminar-style courses that explore a unique interdisciplinary cluster and allow students to understand these topics from the vantage point of different disciplines across the humanities, natural sciences, and social sciences. This emphasis on interdisciplinary study during one's first semester in college ultimately encourages students to continue to explore a wide variety of classes outside of their major for the remainder of their college experience. Other schools are also beginning to adopt similar programs in order to encourage multidisciplinary curiosity and research. One example of this would be Washington University in St. Louis and their Beyond Boundaries program. This program provides students with access to every school on campus, as well as the resources and faculty support necessary for them to be able to seek out interdisciplinary solutions to real-world problems. Now, this transition that we are seeing within universities is most likely taking place due to the fact that researchers have already begun to engage in interdisciplinary learning and collaboration when working to make life-changing breakthroughs. I myself was able to see this firsthand while interning at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. In our ongoing project, we are examining how different geomarkers impact the lung function in children with cystic fibrosis. My role in particular has been to use my programming skills, particularly using the language R, in order to calculate the total road length and road density within each zip code across the US. This information will then be used in the greater R01-funded study as an indicator of air pollution. Now, throughout my internship, I was able to apply many of the computer science principles I had learned in school in order to learn the programming language R and applied to produce a program that got the job done efficiently. However, given that I had to teach myself R, one of the biggest learning benefits I received from my internship was that I was exposed to the power of self-learning. Yet aside from self-learning, I soon also realized that when working on a research team, it is just as important for me to have an understanding of my particular task as it is for me to know my work's application within the context of the greater project. In this case, even though my task was solely based in computer science, the product of my code and the files it produced would be used in statistical models in order to account for the relative amount of air pollution in each zip code. This would then be applied in the context of public health when analyzing whether there is a correlation between air pollution and the reported lung function of children with cystic fibrosis. I was truly able to see the interdisciplinary collaboration at play when I joined one of the Friday group meetings. Here I got to hear all about the other tasks people on the team were working on, and it really gave me a better picture of the project as a whole. Now, in order to visualize the necessity of interdisciplinary learning and research, let's look at this elephant. Here, when you have a variety of experts in their respective fields analyze an object, in this case the elephant, while blindfolded, they'll each come up with different hypotheses. For example, one person, while analyzing the tusks, might say the object is a spear, while another person analyzing the tail might say it's a rope. Now, just as each person only analyzes one part of the elephant, so do experts only ever analyze one aspect of an issue. In order to get the whole picture and truly understand what we are dealing with, we need to get all these different people to collaborate and share their findings. However, in addition to just sharing their findings, each of these people also need to have the ability to traverse different fields of study so that they can understand what their peers are sharing. Given this, it appears that research has become inherently interdisciplinary, and thus society's approach to knowledge acquisition must also change in order to cater to this and equip the future generations with the skills necessary in order to engage in multidisciplinary collaboration. The current COVID-19 pandemic may be the final push that catalyzes this shift towards interdisciplinary learning. Throughout the pandemic, research as a whole has undergone a massive shift towards incorporating even more fields of study than ever before. This is clearly seen in the diversity of members on the White House Coronavirus Task Force, which is tasked with combating the spread of COVID-19, keeping the public informed, and coming up with guidelines for how and when the nation should begin to open up. In order to achieve such a large feat, the force understandably is composed of accomplished people from a wide variety of backgrounds, And among these people are internationally known AIDS experts, a former drug executive, infectious disease doctors, and the former Attorney General of Virginia. On the other side of the world, in Israel, we are also seeing interdisciplinary collaboration. This time it is between systems biology and economics, in order to help create a safe and efficient way to start reopening countries and getting them on track for economic recovery. In the following video, we'll see the interesting plan that the team came up with. And this plan has already begun to be implemented in both Israel and the Netherlands, with promising results so far. So let's see how they came up with all of this.
We have a health epidemic and we have an economic and social epidemic at the same time.
We really have a very strong dilemma here, how to balance between two evils. One is staying in lockdown and the other is opening up, risking having a resurgence.
It's very clear that keeping lockdown on is devastating for the economy, and it's clear that continuing lockdown for long times is untenable.
I think what we need now is a solution that would enable us in the next 1, 2, 3 months time scale to find a way to get the economy back into work and to get people to have their balance again. The balance is both their health and their ability to work and do things. And that's where the idea of using intermittent work plays a big part.
The idea is a 2-week cycle where you work for 4 days and then you enter 10 days of lockdown. Then the next 2 weeks, you work for 4 days and 10 days of lockdown. We know that when a person gets infected, they have a latent period. They're not infectious for about 3 days. They can't infect others. After that, they become infectious, and then they get symptoms. So the 4-10 schedule works this way. If you get infected in a workday, you're in your latent period, and you only become infectious, or you reach your peak infectiousness at home when lockdown, when you don't have access to many other people. And that restricts the virus's ability to infect many people. That brings the virus replication number below 1, which we know is the magic number for the number of new cases to decline. All you need to do is enforce work days and lockdown days. It could be on the scale of a company. It could be on the scale of a county or a state or an entire country. Now you have an economy that's predictable. It's a part-time economy. You know when you go to work, when shops will be open, when everybody will be outside. You can divide the population into 2 groups of households, Group A and Group B, and have Group A do a 4-10 schedule, and Group B do a 4-10 schedule, but on alternating weeks. So you have the extra benefit of reduced density. Plus, you have the economy running with shifts almost continuously.
You can achieve really close to 100% of the business days.
I want to say also that with intermittent work, you give people these 4 days also to do their critical medical checkups and to take care of their health, to take care of their mental health. This was developed in a combination of mathematical models and epidemiologists. The mathematical models we use are the classical models that inform policy all over the world. We think it's urgent to get this information to decision makers in order to have a more responsible plan for an exit strategy, or at least a plan for what happens if there is a resurgence.
In the long term, we're looking for a vaccine, and we want to win the fight against the virus altogether and get back to our lives. But in the midterm, we need to find a way to get back to at least partial work and get the economy back to work. And 4 out of 10 days could enable that and would buy us the time for the scientists and as well as others to find a long-term solution.
So, the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic have shown us that the current issues we face as a global community have consequences that spread into many different fields. And as a result, we must learn to traverse across various different disciplines in order to find effective and long-lasting solutions. Given this need for increased interdisciplinary connections and learning, it now falls upon the responsibility of the education system to cater to these needs. So, what next? How can we make learning more interdisciplinary? Well, since we're about to go through another shift in our approach to knowledge acquisition, one of the first changes that needs to occur has to be with our values. Ancient Greece and Renaissance age Europe both valued the polymath, and they each got their fair share of such men. Now it is our time. In order to produce our own Aristotles and our own Da Vinci's, the education system must undergo a massive restructuring, one in which we value broad knowledge acquisition above all else. So it makes sense that the first aspect to be changed should be the tenure and promotion criteria for professors. As of now, these systems too often emphasize and reward publication and grant funding over teaching. And as a result, it is not uncommon for professors at universities to be much more invested in their own research than in the development of their students. And this is evidenced by the numerous professors who feel pressured both through their salary and through their bosses and through the tenure criteria to cancel classes so that they may present their research at conferences. Of course, research is important and is in fact one of the central tenets of interdisciplinary learning, but we have reached a point where the focus on research is often so strong that it comes at the expense of education. That's why we need to develop a more balanced approach. In doing this, we will also be undergoing a change in values, beginning to value the polymath over the specialist. This is the first step to educational evolution. In addition to changing tenure and promotion criteria, universities must increase their course offerings for interdisciplinary learning. Now, you may be wondering, how is this different from the aforementioned programs led by universities such as Duke and WashU? Well, first of all, the pre-existing programs are very few and far between. Additionally, these programs are portrayed by universities as either an add-on or an alternative to the general approach. This in turn only serves to give those with a pre-existing interest in interdisciplinary studies a means of exploring this mode of learning. However, this group in itself is extremely self-selective, as many people just view higher education as a path for workforce preparation that is best pursued through a narrowing curriculum. Therefore, in order to bring about true change, we need to work towards a change in value, this time among the students. Now, in order to do so, universities need to offer a wider variety of interdisciplinary classes, some of which should be mandatory, so that all students are exposed to interdisciplinary learning and its benefits. After such exposure, then the aforementioned optional programs may come in more use, as they will appeal to a broader and better informed audience. Additionally, universities should add a real-life application to these courses, in order to inspire interdisciplinary passion and problem solving. In fact, some universities that have already begun to create interdisciplinary courses have directed them under the theme of solving pressing world issues, such as climate change, obesity, and poverty, to name a few. However, just as it took decades for each oscillation of the historical cycle of knowledge acquisition, all these relatively major changes may take many years before they are fully recognized. Ultimately, it seems that interdisciplinary learning is the future, and the education system seems on track to accommodate this shift, however gradual this change may be. Yet, despite the revolutionary nature of this educational transition, when it is put in the context of the history of human civilization, we see that this is just another round of the ongoing cycle between specialization and broad exploration. Regardless of whatever phase in this cycle society finds itself in, it's always important that we keep in mind the following quote by Albert Einstein: "All religions, arts, and sciences are branches from the same tree." Sometimes we may want to climb all the way to the edge and analyze the individual leaves, while other times we may want to go back to the base and where all these different branches came from. However, we must always remember to step away from the tree once in a while and see it in its full beauty: leaves, trunk, and everything in between. Thank you. Now I'd like to express my acknowledgments. First of all, I cannot express enough gratitude to Miss Saidi for all of her help and support throughout these past 2 years. I could not have completed my Global Scholars project if it were not for your support in brainstorming ideas, editing, and teaching me a wide variety of philosophical concepts, which have been key in approaching the concept subject of interdisciplinary study. Additionally, I would like to thank Dr. Rhonda Chesniak, Dr. Cole Brokamp, and Ms. Erica Rasnick for granting me the incredible opportunity to take part in their cutting-edge research. I learned so much from being on your project, and these experiences have inspired me to pursue future courses in computer science, statistics, and global health. Furthermore, my completion of this project would not have been possible if it were not for the incredible support I received from my friends and fellow global scholars, Chloe, Henry, Iman, Kara, Nermeen, Nicole, Oliver, and Trace. Thank you all for being there with me every step of the way. It was such a great experience to be able to do my Global Scholars project alongside each of you. Thank you for the constant motivation and fun POK lunches. Lastly, I would like to thank my family for their constant support throughout the course of my Global Scholars project. I'm especially grateful to my mom, who would constantly email me any interesting article she found that had some connection to my project. I could not have done this without you. Thanks again to everyone, and since we are doing this on online form and I can't take any live questions, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at dehrlich.hhai@gmail.com. I'm giving you my personal email because since I've graduated from ParkTutor, I don't know how long my ParkTutor email will stay active. So if you have any questions, you can reach me at this email. Thanks again so much for watching my Global Scholars presentation. Bye.